Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you're listening to the podcast. I say it all the time. I'll say it every time. I appreciate you for listening in. And because you've been such faithful listeners to the podcast, you've helped us get ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you for doing that. And I ask you to help us keep it going. Rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. And if you hear something you like, especially take a moment to review the podcast. Really appreciate that. All right. Now, today I'm talking with Laura Zavelson. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Laura. She's an MBA and she's a what she calls a corporate finance escapee. I love that. Turned serial entrepreneur, former professor of entrepreneurship and business strategist. She helps Gen Xers who are laid off, pushed out, or burned out. And she helps them capitalize on their own experience to build businesses as coaches, consultants, or independent experts. And she draws on 25 years of entrepreneurial experience to do this. And she's committed to helping them have financial stability, flexibility, and freedom. Welcome, Laura Zavelson.
Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait to get into this conversation. We were on a roll before we started recording.
I know this is going to be fun.
All right, but you heard me. So people get a sense of you beyond what I just read. Say a little more about who you are and what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, I think your introduction covered it pretty well. So right now I'm a business strategist, and I do focus on helping Gen X women either transition into entrepreneurship or grow the businesses that they already have. And generally, I work with coaches and consultants because that is one of the easiest transitions that women in midlife can make because we already have so much experience. And one of the things that just bugs me is that so many corporations don't recognize that. And so, and again, it occurred to me as I was creating this business that we had all these women with all this talent, and they were kind of getting, put off in the sidelines. But the talent they had and the skills that they have aren't necessarily the same skills you need to grow a business. And so that's where I hope that I help people connect the dots.
I love that. And of course, I would. How'd you come to this work? Because that's very specific.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I used to primarily work with high growth startups, so more on the venture capital kind of side. And during the pandemic, I started to see, there were massive layoffs. And I noticed, I mean, I'm sure this went on before that, but I noticed that a lot of these women were around my age. They were midlife, mid-career. They were getting laid off. They were trying to start businesses. They were deeply passionate about what they did, but they were just getting stuck in some of the mechanics to grow a business. And the thing about coaching and consulting is that it's not like you're trying to start something nobody's ever done before, right? You're not trying, it's not like you're the founder of Airbnb and you're trying to like make that happen for the first time, right? We know how to build coaching and consulting businesses. And so that means that you can develop a skill set that already exists that will take some of that, well, that should make your path shorter and less frustrating.
Ah, yes. Okay, and so now let's get a little zero in on it a little more. Was there a moment in time or an incident or a day or a situation that said, I'm really going to do this now? I know you said there were some changes, but what happened specifically, if anything?
Yeah, what happened was during the pandemic, we were all so isolated, and I joined an online group of women who were looking for their next chapter. And I was actually sort of looking for my own next chapter. I had recently exited a company. help. I would came in as the adult supervision of it was a startup, and helped them get some traction so they could sell that company. I wasn't actually there for very long, and that gig kind of wrapped itself up. And I was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do next, and the pandemic hit. And I was really, in a funk, and just trying to figure out, what should I do next? And this is all so crazy. And, I had kids that were at college that came home. And so I joined this group of women, some entrepreneurs, but a lot of them just trying to figure out what they wanted to do next. I think very similar to a lot of the things that you talk about.
Yes.
And I was on a Zoom call, of course, one day, and I noticed that a lot of these women who were trying to start businesses were expressing frustration. They were asking questions. They were, they were just sort of stuck. And it occurred to me, I actually have answers for some of this. And I wonder if that's a way that I could put something that's important to me and that I love teaching out there in the world and actually help this group of people that I am very much committed to helping succeed. And so that, I guess, that was the turning point. No one's ever asked me that before, but I think that was it.
Yeah, I love hearing that. And was it easy? I mean, I know it bubbled up during listening to those women. Was it easy for you to then make the shift, or was there some time of struggle or challenge? And I ask because somebody might be in that same spot right now and be inspired by hearing just whatever you have to share.
I think yes, it was easier for me to start putting the steps in place to start a company because I've already done it. Right. I did a software company. I built a branding agency. And so I was the founder of both of those. And then I was an executive in residence at a startup accelerator. So I've helped many, many people sort of put these initial building blocks in place to grow a business. So I think I have an advantage on that side, but I definitely went through a period of, do I have anything to say that anybody wants to hear? Is what I teach really important? I think we all can have those moments of self-doubt, and especially when we're in transition, right? We think, my immediate thing was I can help, and here's a problem I can help solve. And I think I could really make a difference. And then those voices come in and they say, "Oh, they don't need your help. There's plenty of other people who do what you do. You don't really need to do this." And we were speaking just a little bit before the podcast that my original thought was I was going to take all this stuff and I was just going to put it in a book. And thinking about writing a book is very safe because I can write my book and I don't actually have to talk to anybody. I'm just going to go over here and write my book. Well, when you start doing that, you suddenly realize as you're going through this that you really do need to go out and talk to some people and make sure your message resonates. And so I I started putting myself out there. And that's how it kind of grew from, oh, I'm just going to write this down somewhere and keep it all to myself, and maybe I'll send it to a publisher, see what happens. To, okay, let's go ahead and start another business because this is what you really like to do. And so here I am.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did because it led you to this moment here and
It
now.
did.
Yeah. So would you say now in your experience doing this work, I know you have a long here, like we already heard, 25 plus years.
Yeah.
In this iteration, would you say you have purpose in your life and work?
Yes, I would. And I would say I have it kind of two ways, right? Because we can talk about what our purpose is, what our life's work is, or whatever. And I found out relatively late in life that mine is teaching. So I had a whole career in corporate, as I said, corporate finance. Um, and I was even, a CEO of a startup, and I built this other company. And during the after the Great Recession, I shut that company down. That it was a brand strategy agency, and marketing companies did not do very well during the Great Recession. And I was at another one of these just transition points where I didn't know what I was going to do next. And a friend of mine who was a professor at a nearby university, um, her department chair called her and said, "Do you know anybody who can teach venture funding?" And she literally handed the phone to me. And I talked to the department chair, and I said, well, yes, I know a lot about venture funding and about entrepreneurship, but I don't know anything about teaching. And she said, well, why don't you come in and let's have a conversation? And I was petrified. Like I had no idea if teaching was going to be a good idea, but I knew the subject matter, and this door opened for me at a time when a lot of doors were closed. And I said, well, I'm going to try. And I loved it. I loved interacting with the students. I loved sharing my knowledge. I loved the idea that I was convincing people that entrepreneurship was an opportunity for them. And I'm going to tell a story that when I taught that very first class, there was only one woman in my class. And after the first class, I went to the department chair and I said, why do I only have one woman in my class? And I don't know. And I'm like, that's not really okay with me. And so I went to go find out why. And so I talked to that woman who was in my class, and I asked if I could talk to a few of her friends. And what I found out was entrepreneurship was living in the business school, and they were afraid to come take classes in the business school because they were afraid they were going to be have a lot of rigorous math.
Oh,
And I was like, okay, first of all, in entrepreneurship, the hardest math we do is percentages. And I'm pretty sure you all know how to do that. And second of all, I promise we're not going to bite you. Come to the business school and take my class. And so that's actually what I ended up doing, is going around and talking to various women's students groups on campus and saying, this is why entrepreneurial skills are important for you, even if you have no desire to start a company, right? Because you're always going to be trying to get other people to go along with your ideas. You're always going to be trying to um, well, you're always going to be trying to sort of ask people to get on board with things that you want to do. You've got to understand how to plan, how to plan something, and that these skills are useful in corporate America, even as much as they are if you're a solo or a small company. And I was very successful. I ended up increasing the number of women in the minor, like doubling it. And after I had been at the school for like 2 semesters, half of my class was women. So
wow.
I'm very proud of that because
Wow.
I feel like I had the opportunity to influence, at least for the years I was there, a lot of women to, you know, take control of their own destinies by starting their own companies.
I love that. And help them think differently about the whole
Yeah,
situation. And math wasn't the only equation.
exactly.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I mean, there was still room for the men. So, I mean, it didn't take
Yeah.
away from anything. So, yeah, I love that. Love that. And how you were just guided by your love and your desire to make a difference all in one. And you were open when the opportunity came. Because when your friend said that, you could have said no. You could have just
Yeah.
resisted.
I could have. I mean, again, it was not where I thought I was gonna go.
Yeah.
It had really never crossed my mind
Yeah.
that I would become a professor, that I would teach. My mother was a teacher. She taught high school,
Oh.
but I didn't even realize didn't know if I would be good at it.
Mhm.
And I ended up, I mean, like, based on the feedback that I got, I think I was able to help a lot of people. And so I really do. So you are asking, like, do I have purpose in my work now? And so, yes, I do, because I do feel like teaching is what I was meant to do. I wish I had known a little earlier, but that's okay. I get to do it now.
Yeah.
And then I also have purpose in sort of what we were talking about earlier, that in helping keep a lot of sort of this midlife, mid-career talent, like, in circulation,
Oh.
like, how do we, and also getting more money into the hands of women, because I think when that happens, good things follow.
Yes. Yes. I agree wholeheartedly. I love that. All right. So now my brain is competing with two thoughts right now. Okay. I'm going to try to keep them both. We'll see. All right. So purpose. I just have to interject for people who are listening and heard me say this. I think my definition of purpose, true purpose, life purpose, is different than most that I hear. And often it's about doing a thing and that it's external. And by the way, you are an illustration of this, which is why I'm bringing it up now. So hopefully someone else will catch it from your illustration. I'm just winging it here, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so my understanding from my experience, decades of looking for purpose in my own life and studying it and all this, purpose is not out there. Often people think it's a thing I have to find, something big and out there. Um, Solve the issue of homelessness, find a cure from cancer. It's just some external thing, right? A lot of people think that, and they think it's huge, and they think it's a one-time thing. And I think those are all misconceptions. I think it's evolving. It's not one time, not have to be a grandiose thing like that. It could be that, but not usually. And it doesn't come from out there. It comes from inside of you. And I have this home framework without going off on a tangent about how you get at you, what I call it's an acronym for your own uniqueness.
Mm.
And when you bring your own uniqueness and express it, you can express it in different ways and it can change over time. And here's the example you just gave us. The teacher in you, there was a teacher in you, the one that wants to write it in the book and bring it out, or teach it in the class to the students, or teach it to these emerging business owners in lots of ways. So teaching is happening in various ways over the years because it's at the core of who you are, your own uniqueness.
Yeah, I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it didn't, and again, it is it's definitely not something that I ever considered. Not, not when I was in school. There was never a class I took that none of those assessments that you ever take ever said, "Hey, you know what you should be doing. You should be a teacher." But I think, and I don't even necessarily think that I teach business because that's the subject matter that I have the experience in and where I can help people. But who knows if I had figured it out earlier and gone it, I could have. It's really teaching. It's like really sharing my knowledge and helping people learn something new. That's actually it. That's the essence of it. And again, the discovery of that was really interesting for me because it was very unexpected.
Yeah. Now I'm curious, was there anything about little Laura who was helping people with her knowledge back then? Not that she had to be a teacher in the classroom or anything like that, but was there any part of little Laura helping people learn something or sharing knowledge in any remote way?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure, but I do know that I remember taking, I think this was big in the 80s, like a what color is your parachute kind of assessment, right? Where you're trying to figure out your career or whatever. And they asked you to you were supposed to think of times in your life when you really felt good about what you were doing or things you were really proud of. And I did see a pattern through a couple of things I had done. They were just really, they were unrelated to each other until you looked at them and said, what I was actually doing? I was sharing knowledge. I was helping people with something. So yeah, there were little tiny glimpses of it along the way.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
sometimes you have to be hit over the head.
and we don't often like you had the opportunity, but usually we don't have an opportunity to stop and look. I think of it as connecting the dots, but we don't even get a chance to stop and think about the dots because we're on to the next thing. And no judgment about that, just the way our life is in this society and age and time.
Well, and
Uh,
for sure, and certainly once you choose a career, and if your career has specialized training, you kind of get on this bus, and you don't really have a chance to say, "Oh, well, wait a minute," to be really introspective about that, I suppose.
yeah. And you're doing some very important work helping people who are in transition sort of connect the dots from their experience now and use that in the next iteration of their life and work in their next chapter. So
Yeah,
still kind of
absolutely.
doing
Yeah,
that.
and again, it's some people. It's interesting in this, probably has something is connected to your work, but some people do realize that they aren't using their purpose in their chosen career. And so when they are laid off or pushed out, they don't necessarily want to continue that. And so I think that's interesting. I think if you are interested in using the experience you've built during your career, you have that and your network to be able to leverage that into a new venture, which can make that transition a little easier. But if it's amazing how many people come to me and say, well, this is what I've been doing for this whole career, but I have this idea. And it's usually something that it's a talent that they have. Or I don't necessarily like to always say passion, because all passions should not necessarily be your job, right? And there's a lot of noise about that out there, and it's not an always profitable. And that is the point of having a business, is that we want it to be able to support you financially and emotionally. So we do look for which of your ideas has the best opportunity to be profitable. But you can do it either way. But I do think if you have found some purpose in your work, again, just as you were saying, sometimes there's an opportunity to apply it in a different way.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, especially about the passion piece. Part of my teaching is about your own uniqueness, that YOU, your own uniqueness,
Yeah.
includes, and I think it is a misconception about passion because it makes it think like there's one thing and that you have to do that exact thing. So I've learned over my years, that 20 years or so, passion is a part of it. You bring your passion to the thing, not one, aspects of any number of passions. You bring your passions, you bring some aspect of your values, something that really matters to you. You bring some aspect of what some people call your gifts. I call them your natural abilities, those things that come naturally to you. Like for yours, it sounds like it comes naturally to share your
Yeah.
knowledge, right? So, an aspect of each of those, your passions, your values, natural abilities, some piece of that has to be in there in service to someone or something beyond yourself. When you
Yeah.
bring those together and you express it, you can do it any type of any way, in the job, outside of your job, this year, next year, years to come, in different ways.
I think that is such a great way to describe it, because I, I do think there's a lot of messaging out there about not only finding your passion, right? There's this one thing, right? Which is okay, wow, that's a lot of pressure. And then to tell people, okay, now you have to monetize that, right? Ooh, do what you love and you'll never work another day in your life. Well, you know what? We can love many things and we can be good at many things and we can be passionate about many things, but it doesn't mean that all of those things are going to make us money. And if you are trying to build a livelihood or a financial opportunity around something, we need to look at some of those other things that you mentioned and see what else we can bring to the table, so we find ourselves a profitable opportunity. So we can not only love what we do, but we can also support ourselves.
Yes, yes, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Of course.
Yeah,
Of course, we're on the same wavelength.
that's right.
Okay, all right. So now let's talk to the woman that's listening, and I'll describe her to you. Oh, this is what I think, and I call them high achieving women. All
Yeah.
right, so let's take the high achiever. She is ambitious in a positive way. She's responsible. She's always been the responsible one, no matter what she's doing. And I see some kind of nods of approbation, like you can relate to some of this.
Yeah.
It's good at a few things. People come to her in a professional life. They want advice. What do you think about this? No, whether it's related to her role or anything she does or not, she's the one that they kind of come to. In her home, community, neighborhood, people come to her. Let me get your advice or opinion about, it could be any random thing, unrelated to her work or whatever that she does or not, but she's the one. So they come, and she's okay with that, but she's the one that supports a lot of other people. So when I first started the podcast, I was like, well, who supports her while she's supporting everyone else? What if we all came together and supported each other in conversation like this? And then after a little while passed, I thought, oh, also, if she's at the point of saying, I'm successful, I checked all the boxes, I did all the things, but there's something missing, and she's yearning for more meaning and purpose, fulfillment, then it all came together. So that's who we're talking to now.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were talking to her and she was here, like you are, uh, what would you say to her from your life or your work or any part of your experience that might be encouragement or might be advice or whatever you think might be helpful?
Yeah, I when I was in, the corporate finance role, man, really felt like I was checking all the boxes, right? I got that MBA because I needed to go all the way, and then I needed to get this big job where I wore a suit and played with spreadsheets and all the thing. And it was, I think externally it probably looked successful, but I was not happy. I did not like what I was doing. I wasn't, I was super stressed. Um, and so I get that. And I do think that there's my advice or my thought would be if you have any interest in entrepreneurship or any seed of an idea, honor that and explore it because there are a lot of different paths your life can take. And there are ways to de risk entrepreneurship and make it more of a calculated risk rather than something, you're just jumping into the unknown, right? And especially if you have experience and networks and you're a natural leader, like the women you described, they're the women who, they're in a room and nobody raises, something, a decision needs to be made, and they don't necessarily raise their hand, but everybody turns to them. They're just natural leaders. They give that off and people respect them and they want to know what they think. And so if you have, and often we're people like that are helpers by nature. So if you see a problem that you would like to solve for a group of people, and again, as you said, it does not have to be a large problem that's facing society. It could be a small problem like I saw. But if there's a group of people you'd like to help and a problem that you can solve, there are ways to explore that can help again reduce the risk, and you might unlock some real freedom for yourself to do something that lights you up, to use a phrase that's overused but very descriptive, and to find some time flexibility. And I think as a woman, I'm a mom and I have aging parents like so many of us in this age group, to free up some time flexibility so there's time for them and there's time for you. Right. You want to talk about a great way to reduce the stress in your life, even if you are an entrepreneur and there's stress around that. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but to free up your time, to get control back over your time, entrepreneurship is great for that. And then I would say, as you talk about, as we get older, and there's a lot of data on this, there's a lot of research, women want more meaning and the ability to create impact. And I think if you want to choose your projects and choose what you work on and choose who you work with, again, entrepreneurship is a great avenue for that. And so give yourself the opportunity to explore it.
Yes, I love that. I love that. I mean, that is such wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. And this has been such a delight. And we were going on and on before we started, and we
I
can
know.
continue to go on and on, but I know you don't have all day. So, but if there's anything that I didn't get to ask you that you might say, oh, let me just share one more thought before we tell people how they can get in touch with you. So if you have one more thing, we'll do it. If you don't have one more thing, we can get right to sharing how they can
Well,
reach.
I do have one more thing. I want to just say, I am so glad you're doing this podcast because I think understanding your purpose is the key to being happy, to being content, to feeling like you you're not missing something, like to kind of rounding out your life. And as I said, I really do feel like my purpose is to teach, and had no idea that was the case until this opportunity came along. And I was able to use that and discover something about myself that I didn't even know was there. And so if people are listening to you and they realize that there's this opportunity to discover this, and you are able to help people find that inside themselves. I just think that's such a gift.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's one of the great joys of my life doing this. I mean, the podcast and the other ways that I share this message. So thank you for sharing that. All right. So where can people, because I'm imagining they're like, oh, I want to hear more. I want to hear more. Where can people get in touch with you?
Well, I would love that. The best way to find me is on my website at laurazavelson.com, and I'm going to spell it for you. It's Laura, Z as in zebra, A, V as in victory, ELSON. So laurazavelson.com. I am the only Laura Zavelson. And so if you type that into YouTube, you will come across my YouTube channel. And that has a lot of resources for people who are interested in starting or growing coaching and consulting businesses. And so I would say that those are two places where you can find out a little bit more about me and also get some resources if you are sort of contemplating that seed of entrepreneurship.
Okay. All right, Laura, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insight, your energy. I feel it, your passion. I feel it coming through. Thank you for taking the time and sharing all that with us here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
With my joy. Okay, everyone, I'd love to hear your response. Anything that struck you about this conversation, about this interview, go ahead and go over to the podcast website, leadershippurposepodcast.com, leadershippurposepodcast.com, and we'll have some resources for you there. Or if you'd rather go to social media, on all the channels, but I spend most of my time on LinkedIn at Robin L. Owens, PhD, Robin L. Owens, PhD. So just send me a connection request or a message and let me know what's on your mind. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.